Hello students, this is Neeta Biju. Welcome to the second class of Business Studies. In our previous class, we just studied the introductory part of the first chapter, that is Business, Trade and Commerce, and we just studied the meaning or the concept of business, trade and commerce. In today's class, we'll be studying a brief history of trade and commerce in India. How did our Indian business develop in trade and commerce gradually and evolutionary is what we are going to study in today's class. So, history of trade and commerce. A network of roads emerging into the Silk Route helped in establishing commercial and political contacts with foreign kingdoms of Asia. So, when we are talking about a network of roads emerging into the Silk Route, helped in establishing commercial and political contacts with foreign kingdoms of Asia means from one kingdom to another kingdom, or now we call it as from one country to another country. There was good contact and relationship through roadways, and that roadways was called as Silk Route because they mainly had trade on textiles and silk clothes. That is why it's called as Silk Route. The maritime routes linked the east and west by the sea and were used to trade spices, and it was known as Spice Route. So when we are talking about the maritime routes refers to the sea or the waterways, and it linked the east and the west by waterways or sea, and it was trading on spices, and that is why it was called as Spice Route. Then we have this history of trade and commerce here, which is again subdivided into subpoints. We shall do that one by one. First one is indigenous banking system. The second one is rise of intermediaries. The third one is transport. The fourth one is trading communities were strengthened. The fifth one is merchant corporations. The sixth one is major trade centers. The seventh one is major exports and imports. The eighth one is position of Indian subcontinent, the world economy from first 80 to up to 1991 reforms. And the ninth one was India begins to reindustrialize. So this is how gradually Indian economy grew and how it started and where we are today is what we are going to study in this topic, that is history of trade and commerce. So here the first one is the indigenous bank system. So in ancient India it was indigenous bank system. As economic life progressed, metallic money had been introduced, which in turn accelerated the economic activities. So when metals were introduced and it was used as a medium of exchange as money, then it pushed and it moved and it developed economic activities. So in this indigenous banking system, documents such as HUNDI and chitti were used for carrying out transactions in which money passed from one hand to another hand. So there were important documents like bills of exchange, which is called as hundi and chitti. So today what is called as bill of exchange is what is called as hundi. We'll study this. Hundi refers to a financial instrument as bill of exchange that evolved in the Indian subcontinent for use in trade and credit transactions. They were used equivalent to checks. So whenever you have any trade transaction and when the buyer and the seller deals with any goods or services, and when the buyer promises to pay not immediately but takes the goods or services on credit and promises to pay the seller the amount or money of goods later on, then there would be a document or instrument signed by the seller and it will be accepted by the buyer, and then it will be signed across and this is what was called as hundi, promising one party to pay to the other party. And today it is what is called as bill of exchange. So these hundis those days, you can see the pictures were looking like a documentary. You can see all this is just like a promissory note or like a bill of exchange. One party promising to pay the amount to the other party. So one party should sign the bill and the other party should accept the bill. So these were the instruments used as a means of exchange and for trade as well as on credit. Our next one is the rise of intermediaries. The second stage that took place there was intermediaries are called as the middlemen or the agents or the brokers. So intermediaries helped a lot manufacturers in foreign trade. Intermediaries consist of commission agents, brokers and distributors both for wholesale and retail goods. So intermediaries means the middlemen. Middlemen are the wholesalers and the retailers. So these people were called as brokers or agents, and these people were actually mainly responsible for pushing foreign trade or for the development of foreign trade. Our next aspect was transportation. So transportation by land and sea, which is also called as maritime, as I've already told you, any transport or means of transport through waterways or by sea is what is called as maritime. It was very popular in the ancient times. Roads as a means was used as communication, had assumed key importance in the entire progress of growth. Pepper was particularly valued in Indian Empire and was known as black gold. So pepper was a main product to deal with, and it was transported from one place to another place, and it was called as black gold. So transport through land and sea was very popular at that time, and when transport is through sea or waterways, it is called as maritime. The next aspect was trading communities were strengthened. The Punjabis and Multanis merchants managed business in the north. The Butts managed business and trade in Gujarat and Rajasthan, and in west they were called as Mahajan and Chettiars. Actually, Chats they were called, were the very important and popular traders in the south. So this is how trading communities in different places, they were called with different names, and they established their own communities and they started their own businesses and they became very popular. Our next aspect is merchant corporations. So these were the corporations called as guilds. They are formed to protect the interest of the traders. So these are the corporations, autonomous corporations, voluntary corporations, and these corporations or associations were called as guilds, and they were mainly formed for the interest of the traders and businessmen in the ancient times. These corporations were organized on formal basis and framed their own rules and regulations and code of conduct. So they had all the freedom and liberty to frame and to set their own rules and regulations and to set their own code of conduct. It was said that even the kings of those days would respect and obey these guilds, that is merchant corporations. Our next aspect are wherein major trade centers came into existence, and these are the few very important trading centers that came into existence in the ancient India, that is Pataliputra, Peshawar, Taxila, Indraprastha, Mathura, Varanasi, Mithila, Ujjain, Surat, Kanchi, Madura, Broch, Kaviripata, and Tamarapiti. So this is what are all the major trading centers that came up those days. Next was a very important aspect wherein we started with the foreign trade, that is major exports and imports in our ancient India. So here we should know, dear students, the major exports consisted of spices, wheat, sugar, cotton, parrot. live animals, animal products such as skin, fur, horn, and then other metals, pearls, copper, etc. These were the major exports of ancient India, and major imports were horses, animal products, Chinese silk, linen, gold, silver, lead, rubies, glass, etc. I hope, dear students, you know what are exports and imports. Exports means selling of goods from one country to another country. Import means buying of goods from another country. So I hope you know this. So this is what is import and export, and these are the items of imports and exports of our ancient India. Next one is India in world economy. So from the 1st to the 7th centuries, India was estimated to have the largest economy in the world. The country was often referred to Swarna Bhumi and Swarna Deep in the writings of many travelers. So here it was very prosperous. From 1st century to the 7th century, India became very prosperous, and it was said that it had the largest economy in the world. And therefore many travelers and many writers referred India as Swarna Bhumi, the land of gold, and Swarnadeep, the bank of gold, in their writings and in their scripts. But during the 18th century, the British Empire began to take roots in India, thereby the Indian economic condition slowly changed and our country started exporting raw materials and importing manufactured goods. So when we were at the peak, suddenly during the 18th century, what happened is our British Empire, they came and conquered the whole of our country, and they started conquering one by one all the states, and thereby total economic condition was totally changed, and it started exporting, that is selling raw materials from our country, and we were buying, that is importing the finished products or manufactured goods from another country. So this change took place when Britishers came into rule in our country. Our next aspect is India begins to reindustrialize. So when we got independence, after independence, the process of rebuilding the Indian economy started. As a part of it, the first 5-year plan was implemented in the year 1952. Importance was given to the establishment of modern industries, modern technology and scientific institutes, space and nuclear programs. So the government of India introduced reforms in the year 1991, which is known as liberalization. So after the independence, after we were free from the British rule, the process of rebuilding our Indian economy started, and our Indian government started with the first 5-year plan, and there everything was well developed and well established with modern industries, modern technology and scientific methods, space and nuclear programs. And very importantly, in the year 1991, government introduced reforms known as liberalization. So this liberalization means total freedom from licensing system, total freedom from restrictions, total freedom from all very rigid rules and regulations. Liberalization was a reform for freedom and liberty of licensing and restrictions. And then the conclusion, dear students. So Indian economy is now one of the fastest growing economy in the world today. The recent initiatives by the government of India are Make in India, Skill India, Digital India, Foreign Trade Policy 2015-20, and this helped the economy in terms of exports and imports and have balanced trade. So this is the conclusion, dear students, how gradually we evolved from the ancient times to the present times, how our business, trade, and commerce evolved is what is the history of trade and commerce explaining to us. This is all for today's class, dear students. I hope you have understood. Thank you.